Okay, beta testers, this is Crash here. You should receive in the mail this frame kit, codenamed Razor 200, because if you had a blade, well, now with my frame, you're going to have a razor blade. That's kind of what I'm leaning toward right now. Anyway, these are the frame pieces you've got. You've got a base plate, you've got a top plate, and then we've got 4 motor spacers. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. I am not providing hardware on my retail kit. It's just going to be the plates and the spacers and stuff. But on you guys, because I wanted to get you guys feedback as quickly as possible, I have thrown together some hardware. You may want to use something different, and that's perfectly fine. But anyway, this is what you're going to have. The spacers, what I'm using is just a nylon number 4 inside hole. It's a spacer, nylon spacer. I got it at my Ace Hardware, and it will take a number 4 screw. And those things are like 13 cents a piece. I got them in 1/2 inch. I have found that 1/2 inch is enough to clear. If you want more room, then by all means go to a larger size. But you'll have to get a larger bolt. We're using stainless steel 440 1-inch long screws. I've got a couple of number 4 washers included, and then finally I've got a regular number 4 nut. Now I apologize, this is not a lock nut. I couldn't get it, and unfortunately my hobby shop is closed right now, so I couldn't run up there. When I bought this hardware yesterday, I'd intended to do that, go to the local hobby shop, buy some Dubro 440 nuts, aircraft style. Couldn't get them. Anyway, if you don't have them and you want to use these, you can just use a little thread lock, either, some sort of blue thread lock. You can use nail polish if you want to raid the wife's cosmetic stuff, whatever. Anyway, a little super glue will set those threads. A little hot glue after everything's tight. Sometimes hot glue I've used that in the past, and it's worked for a temporary solution. Also, you guys are going to hate me. I was looking for some screws to mount the board. We'll talk about that. Anyway, I've got some number 2 screws. They're 1/2 inch. Honestly, I would have loved to have had some number 0 screws with a Phillips head. I couldn't get them. That's a special order item. You can use your servo screws if you've got some 5-gram servos and you find the mounting screws. Those will work oftentimes for what we're going to use them for. These are slotted head. Again, you guys are going to hate me, but you don't have to use these if you have another solution. Ideally, what I would like to use in place of these is a number 0 screw that's about an 1/8 inch long. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. More on that later. So anyway, that's the kit you're going to get. You don't have to use the hardware that I'm using. When you do, it's going to look like this. Bam. There's the screws. And, looks pretty good. There are other solutions. If you have a computer store handy where you can get computer type standoffs, these are just nylon hexagonal standoffs, 1/2 inch, and then I've got a plastic 440 screw top and bottom. Okay, so that's another option. And actually on mine, I got hardware from Ready to Fly Quads, and I'm actually using the aluminum standoffs that are 1/2 inch with the stainless steel 440 screws. So anyway, some options there for you. All right, now we'll get started with building this. Just some notes. I like and I dislike these motors. The motors are fantastic. The way they mount, first off, you'd think, oh, that's great. They're so easy to get in and out. Well, it's kind of a pain in the tail. The shaft of the motor, but what it turns out is they have machined this motor. They've machined the bearing tube to give it threads. It looks like it's an M7 because it's not an M6 and it's not an M8 and it's not a 1/4 inch or a 5/16. So it's about an M7. I only had one style nut to find at my local Ace Hardware, and I forget what the pitch was, but the pitch did not match these motors. So if either of you guys find a metal nut that goes in here to replace it, I'd love to know where to get it, because I would order boxes of them to include in the kit. Anyway, with your factory setup, your factory frame, it's going to be hard for you to see, and certainly it's not going to show up on camera, but on your motor mounts, there's actually a flat spot in there, and that keys the motor. When you push the motor in, it keys the motor to the flat spot on the bearing tube so that it takes away the motor's tendency to twist under torque. I can't machine that in. to my frame, unfortunately. So what we're going to do, I'm going to tell you, when you build this thing, when you're transferring your motors over from your broken frame, well then what I'm going to suggest you do is take a spacer and put just the tiniest drop of hot glue. Just blip, blip, one on each side. And then take your motor and push it in. And what's going to happen is that's going to glue the little washer that's on that thrust bearing or on that bearing tube. There's a little washer there. It's going to glue that washer to our spacer. And then again, what I do is, hot glue works in these types of cases. What I would recommend you do is put, maybe opposing, let's say you put a drop here and a drop here. Well, then on the other sides, do a little tiny drop here and here so that you push the motor's bearing tube through the spacer and then through the frame. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep you from having to do the plastic nut so tight that you strip the threads on the nut. You'll rely on that glue and then just a snug acorn nut to take the torque off of, I guess, to keep the motor from spinning under torque. Because if it spins, you're going to damage the wires and you're probably going to toast the motor. And gee whiz, they want $30 for a motor. That's nuts. So anyway, recommendations: transfer your motors over and use the spacers first. Spacer goes in a little couple of drops of glue. That hot glue again holds well on HDPE to metal. It's working fine on mine. And then you may want to put in a couple more drops there to this. So it just gives us something to keep the motor from torquing around. Again, I cannot, unfortunately, with an 1/8" bit, I can't put a flat spot in this hole for the bearing tube. Okay, now the other thing that you're going to do is you'll take your frame, and this frame was given to me by Mike. Thank you, Mike, because I accidentally destroyed my frame when I was cutting out the electronics mount. Once you split your frame apart, you'll notice that there is a mount here that's holding your board. Once you take your board off, your 4-in-1 speed controller, and you take your flight stabilization off, don't lose those little tiny screws. My gosh. Anyway, once you get those things out, you can take a razor and slice ever so gently the 4 corners of the board so that you can pull the stabilizer off. Unfortunately, I wrecked it on mine. I've got a frame in the box. It's beautiful. It's perfect for my 200 that I could have sold, but I tore up the mounting plate getting it out, so I had to fall back on the one that Mike sent me. So be careful. Cut those flush. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice, and I can't really show you here, but you're going to notice that we've got a rectangle here, right? That rectangle directly corresponds to the rectangle on our board, on our little mount that we've cut out of our Blade 200 frame, which is cool. There's a couple of different ways. We're actually going to, that part that you cut out is what we're going to use on our frame to mount our electronics. I looked for standoffs. Wow, I couldn't find any standoffs available for screws that size, and I'm still working on finding solutions, but I don't have it yet. So for right now, we'll use that board. So what you'll see, and if I can get enough light with the camera, you'll see that I have got that board in there mounted to the frame. With the stock Blade 200. Anyway, how did I do that? I'll tell you. I took the piece on the second one, and I used a little bit of double-sided tape. This looks like a regular Scotch tape, but it's double-sided. I had that on hand. If you have something similar, you can. If not, use a little spot of hot glue to glue it in place. The reason you want to do that is you want to put it in to where the inside cutaway matches the rectangle here on my frame, and that'll help you line it up. Maybe I can show you from the inside, I don't know. Once you get everything out, you'll figure it out. Anyway, you're going to put that in there. Stick it down, and then ever so carefully, you're going to use these little bitty screws. I would say use your X-Acto blade. I don't have one here on my desk right now, but just a number 10 X-Acto, put it down onto the plastic mount from your Blade 200 frame, and then just kind of spin it. What you're doing is making a pilot hole. Once you kind of get it started, then you can take this number 2 1/2-inch screw and screw it in. And that will hold your board in place, or your plastic mount from your old Blade 200 frame. I would recommend putting a screw here, 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 and here. The good thing about this HDPE plastic is it will thread to those wood screws. It will self-thread. Anyway, if you have, because of the length of those, if you end up with it being a little too long, just take your Dremel tool and grind off the point on the back side if you need to. Anyway, that's the most difficult of this install. Everything else goes pretty smoothly. And then as you can see, we've got, all I've done here is I've plugged the motors back in to their, proper ones, connections on the 4 and 1 speed controller. And I have strung the LED. Everybody loves the LEDs on these things. I can understand. Anyway, I've just routed them underneath a zip tie, underneath the cord, and then set them there so that they stick out. They'll be able to be seen whether it's right side up or upside down, and that's the solution that I have right now. I do have some plans to try this same frame in polycarbonate to see if we can put the LEDs down into a relief hole and make the whole thing glow. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, that's working. You might, if you find that they flap or they don't stay where you can see them, stay visible, put a little dab of hot glue on there and push it in place. It'll work just fine. I've also, for your convenience, if you want to go and get additional standoffs, different lengths, whatever, there are holes, one hole in each of the boom arms, and you can use that for landing gear if you should decide to mount your battery on the bottom. I have got mine on the top, and eventually I'm going to be exploring FPV opportunities with this. So, we'll see. Anyway, you should be able to put everything together, button it all up, and it'll fly just like normal. I only put in one flight on this thing in the stock configuration, and then I've got a couple of flights now on it with my new Razor frame. Everything seems to fly, pretty nice. I don't notice any difference, so I think we've got a pretty good deal going on. As you can see, how am I holding my battery down? I put these slots in here, A, to cool the 4 and 1, and B, to offer some mounting options. I've also got an arrow there on the board if you can see it, and that whole thing is just, quick orientation while I was building it, and I thought, yeah, leave it on there. Anyway, I'm just using a cheap Velcro strap that I bought at Ace Hardware, and I run it through. I've got a little dab of, just a little square of Velcro on my battery, and then I need to trim these down. But anyway, that's how I hold the battery on. If you find with yours that the electronics are a little too close, mine just cleared that fuzzy side of the Velcro. But if you want to, put 2 straps in the center, put a little Velcro stick-on piece to match your battery, and then come over here and run 2 little Velcro straps to hold your battery in. Either way you want. The same way on the bottom. You can run a strap through here and just run 2 straps. And that'll work as well. Anyway, that's what I've got going on, and now that I've got a little quick instructional video for you guys shot, I'm going to box these things up and send them all out. My thanks go out to Mike McCormick, Scott Bland, and Philip Rowe for you guys beta testing. My expectations is nothing more than let me know how you like it, let me know if you can break it. I don't expect you to go out and trash it. I don't expect any articles. I don't expect any YouTube videos, or, I don't expect comments from you. I just want your feedback. And if it turns out that you do want to, promote the frame, then by all means do so. Thank you guys very much. Give me a shout if you have any questions.